we started off with the idea of planting seeds and harvesting, right? This is the first day of spring, 11:33, another 5 minutes or so. we have our first day of spring. And I think sometimes, like our circumstances, spring gets confused, like it's snowing right now instead of, lovely flowers, which is what we think of spring. But we all have to start someplace, right? We have to start. And I like this rendition where it goes through, like, we all think that way. We think, oh, this happened to us, so we're this or that, or I made this mistake here or there, and so I can't do whatever now, or I have to do so much healing before I can make a choice to bloom in the moment. And no, the blooming can happen because you planted the seeds. That Eckhart Tolle thing we saw at the beginning, where he talks about, I talk and say, use me now. Use me now. And then the recognition that when we say use me now to the universe and to God, that we are really speaking to us and telling ourselves it's time for us to use our own talents. It's time for us to know that that seed have been planted, and now it's time to fertilize that with our thoughts and our prayers and our meditations and our discernment, and to bloom and move forward. I love this. I'm going to read it again, the Philippians 4:8 reading from the beginning, because it says, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, these are the things that we bring to the forefront. These are the things we think about. These are the things we shine in our heart. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't snow on the first day of spring in our lives, right? It doesn't mean that. But as soon as we pull from the quote positive, the things that will bring out that extra joy, and to recognize all that other stuff, but to not stay there, That's a huge thing with any kind of healing, I think, moving forward. And that's, we all know that's how this building is here to begin with, is because people sat for healing for each other, and explored that. And how did they get there? Well, they recognized there was stuff, right? They recognized their physical stuff, their mental stuff, their spiritual stuff. They recognized all the stuff in the world around them that is, snowing on their parade. And yet, to keep moving back to whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, and whatever is pleasing. Those are the things that bring out the feelings in us to move forward, so that when we get impulses that it's time to grow and it's time to move, that we've done enough of that other groundwork, we've planted enough of our seeds, we've done enough of that healing to move forward, that we actually act on it. Because it is us. We are the universe. Just the song, I am light, I am divine, I am the divine presence. Are we ready to own that already? Are we ready to own that we are the divine presence and actually get up and move despite anything else? And that's not easy. It's not easy. And do we realize that we can't move on everything, but we can move on our talents, or a cause, or an event, or a thought that hits our special talent, whatever that is. Sometimes I think we get so overwhelmed by the everything that's happening. I mean, all you got to do is flick on the news for 2 seconds and see 20 things that need taken care of, right? And yet we can get really overwhelmed really, really fast. Or we can start putting each other into categories of, well, you're not doing it right this way, and this needs to be done. And then we all get bogged down because then nothing moves. I found it interesting this past week. And there's a comedian named Trevor Noah that actually did a little bit on this. But in this past week, of everything that we argue about, our Senate was able to agree that they hate flicking clocks back and forth for daylight savings time. Now think about that. They can agree on nothing, right? And yet all of them unanimously said, we don't like the feel when we have to flick these clocks back and forth. This has got to stop somehow. And Trevor Noah's skit about this, he's like, it gives me a little ray of hope that somewhere in us we can agree on something. That there is something that we can agree on and expand on. And if there's even a tiny thing like, I don't like my feel when I have to flick those clocks, he's like, there is so much hope for everything else. And I'm like, I know he's a comedian and he's speaking from a comedian, but isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? If we can find one tiny little thing that we can all say, you know what? I understand your feeling in this situation. And maybe, and now there's a great debate on the health of flicking the clocks, whatever. But the feeling that we can each at least acknowledge that feeling in each other. And I know I've mentioned it before, but there are a couple of sites, in the political realm of things. And I think that's the other thing we have to realize. Everything is political. Trying to split our lives up into let's only talk about our spiritual or talk about the this. It's all one big ball or whatever. And to recognize the commonality anywhere. And I know there's a couple of sites I've mentioned before. The first one that's coming to mind right now is called The Flip Side, where they take the time to take whatever topic it is, even the daylight saving time topic, right? And they go, this group of people with this label say these things, and they have the quotes from them in the history. And this group of people with these, with this label says these things. And they put them side by side in a little email that takes all of 5 minutes to read every day, right? And yet it's a lovely 5 minutes to see that, sometimes we are saying some of the same things, only we're saying them in such a way that we're using such different words that we're not connecting on our own little simple light. This past week, the group that I have online, and I should have brought the quotes with me, but one lovely lady sent me 2 different quotes, and it looked like it was saying 2 totally different things. One was saying, well, if we judge things, then you know what, we need to check ourselves at the door because judgment is not a good thing. Then the other quote said, well, you know what, we need to judge things or we won't be able to know for ourselves what we want to do and what we don't want to do. It seems like opposites, except when you look up the definition of something simple that we think we all understand, like judgments, there's 2 different definitions. One is there's a definite right and a definite wrong, right? Like if you were being tried at, tried in a court of law because of some kind of charge, right? And the judge says, this is what the law says, there's a judgment one side or the other. That's one version of judgment. The other version is discernment. So if we understand which version or which definition these quotes or these people's viewpoints are from, instead of arguing that one's wrong and one is right, we can see that they both have truth in them because they're using different definitions of the same word. Yes, we have to discern, but yes, we also have to know for ourselves where the definite right and definite wrong is for ourselves in the way we deal with things. So they're both right, even though they seem really opposite. Are we willing to take the tiny extra bit of time to look up those things or read that 5 minutes to realize that we're really not that far apart? There's a little ray of hope because we can all agree we hate flicking the clocks back. It's crazy to think about. There's a little ray because we've all planted seeds for ourselves. We've all planted seeds. We've all planted hopes. We've all planted dreams. And do we wait for that external source to say now it's time? Or do we listen to the internal source that's already connected to say now it's time? We've been reading from the Release and Renew book as we move into the Easter time. This week, it's a story by Reverend Kathleen Beasley called Divinely Guided. And she says, guidance is one of those things we can all use at some point in our journeys. The question is whether we choose to use it or proceed without it. As a spiritual leader, guidance comes to me these days by listening deeply. I move through the world as a hearing impaired individual. Thus, listening is something I have to do without great intention that is equally split between staving off distractions and focusing on the message of the moment. I tell you this to indicate that deep listening takes intention and effort. Theologian Paul Tillich said, the first duty of love is to listen. And I might add that bringing love into the situation is the definition for healing. So our first duty is love, to listen. Listening helps us find our way through the noise of the world. We listen to navigation systems that help us move from point to point. We turn to prayer to know God's guidance. We listen to music for inspiration and enjoyment. Much like a flashlight that leads us through the darkness, listening allows us to remain on course. What do you listen to for guidance? Does it move you from moment to moment, breath to breath, and glory to glory? The truth about guidance is that it moves you. It exists to bring about movement of some sort. Guidance from listening is a shared ritual of love that allows us to connect to the meaning beneath the surface, to experience the spaces between words or the silences amidst the rhythm. It's listening for the silent call of the soul. It's noticing one's breath, feeling the movement of air in and out, and noticing everything happening at the moment. Here is the thing about guidance and listening. They don't just move through us and our experiences. Both guidance and listening help to create our experiences of the world itself. When we choose to learn and to lean into love, to hear the voices, prayers, stories, or lyrics of the world, it changes us for the better and for the good. So much so that we become the living guidance that takes root in the sacredness of that listening world. Guidance only matters if we are willing to trust it and go where it leads us. Love is always listening to us and for us. Be willing to listen with your whole being and know that you are always divinely guided in every moment. And that divine guidance is you already. You are the seeds that have been planted here, right? And the universe is that gardener. So yeah, we plant the seeds with our intentions, but you are the intention of the universe to grow and to bloom. And even before you were planted here, you recognize that life fullness in that soul self. You were offered talents and inspiration. Sometimes I think we think of ourselves as the weeds and we want to pull ourselves out of the mixture and just go over here and let everything else happen by itself. And yet we are the seeds here. We are the beautiful flowers. We are the positive blooms and thoughts. And are we willing to follow that? You know, have flowers follow the sun, you know, and they do it instinctually and there's no effort at all. You know, I think we fight that sometimes. We are always led that way. And yet, you know, sometimes I think we just want to stay in the ground and pretend that it's snowing on every first day of spring and just stay there and not take the chance to come up and follow the sun. You know, because you know, the worst thing that's going to happen is that your seeds fall someplace else and you get a chance to do it all over again. That's the worst thing that can happen. And we're so afraid of that change and that movement. And yet, you know, the beauty of you being a seed is you're a perpetual seed. It doesn't matter where you are or where you go or what situation, you have that chance to follow that guidance, to follow the sun, and to be shining and beautiful in the way that you need to. And that fertile environment that we read about at the beginning says creating a fertile environment for new positive thoughts to grow on a regular basis. All that is recognizing our divine guidance and continually bringing that out in ourselves through reflection, through prayer, through taking care of ourselves in the way that's needed, you know, even physically, which is also hard because sometimes we do want to stay in the dirt and turn on Netflix and forget the rest, right? And yet we need to move. We need to take care of ourselves. So whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, these are the things we bring forward. That's the light we're following. And so it is.